happy to come back. For those of you guys that don't know, my name is Ryan Mouradian. I'm the DPW Superintendent. I started back in the fall of 2021, so time goes by fast. I still feel like I'm the new guy, but that's okay. I enjoy it. So today, last time I was here, we talked about just kind of some of the stuff we did, right? I kind of called it a year in review for the year of 2023, which was a busy year for us. And today I want to talk a little bit about our existing DPW facility and some of the things we're looking at towards the future, right? So we just created a DPW facility committee, and I'll get into that a little bit. And we've done some minor work on what is the future of our DPW facility. Is it because something needs to happen where we've outgrown it, we've outaged it, and something needs to happen in the future, whether it's a major renovation, whether it's a new facility, whether it's a various number of different upgrades. So we'll kind of go through, I got a lot of pictures like usual. I shortened it up a little bit so we have more time for questions. So I'll kind of get into it. What I'd like to do is to start, we'll review the existing facility, kind of show you the different additions that have been added onto that facility over the years. We'll talk about what are our goals, what's our end game for this facility committee and our facility in general. What have we done so far, and what are some of our next steps? So everyone knows what the existing facility is, stone's throw away from here, right on Worcester Road across from Pandolf's. We get a nice violent shake every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. when the windows start to rattle, and thankfully, they come in and warn us every day that they blast. But it's pretty unique experience if you haven't been in and around that building when they blast. The parcel's 3.7 acres. It hits DCR on one side. There's commercial buildings down the street, and the back side is a river that abuts the rail trail. So if you walk the rail trail between Washacum and Gates, you walk right behind our building. In the summer, or in the winter, you can definitely see the whole building. In the summer, even as well. So the building, we believe it was built in around 1958, the main building, and then there were additions installed in 1972, 1980, and a big one in 2008. So we'll kind of go through those. Here's kind of my laser pointer doesn't work on the TV, but here's an overview of the building. This is Route 12. There's Pandolf's up there. Here's what it looks like with the salt shed down there. So this building right here, what's outlined in blue, that was what was built in 1958. It included 4 garage bays. Actually, I think it might have been 3 garage bays. No, it was 4, sorry. And some first floor office space. So that was the building that the DPW started with. I believe they used to be next door. Was that it?
Yes, they were.
Yeah, and then this was the on our current site, the first building. In sometime between 1958 and 1973, I couldn't find the exact date, 2 garage bays were added. So that's the red that you see down on the bottom. We call that semi-cold storage. It's not freezing cold, but it's cold enough. We do have a waste oil heater in there as the source of heat. Still a little bit chilly, but enough to take the edge off. So this was initially built to act as bays for the mechanics. Because they had storage bays. Now we call this the lawnmower bay, semi-cold storage. We can fit 2 trucks in there, and we work on lawnmowers and do chainsaw work and whatnot on a bench in the back, which we'll show you some pictures of. In 1978, this 40 by 98 unheated steel building was built along closest to the river, closest to the rail trail, as you can see on the bottom of your screen. So that included 1 drive-through bay and 2 additional bays, and then there's some space between those bays that doesn't have a door that you can kind of shimmy equipment in. And this is essentially covered storage. There's no heat, there's no insulation, there is electricity. The doors, a couple of them are manual, some of them are automatic or have door openers. But that's what we call cold storage. So at least we can keep the snow off things and whatnot, but not heated space. In 2008, that was a big addition. You guys probably all saw it as you were driving by. So what that did is it added 4 bays in front of the original 4 bays. So the blue building right here, that was the original. This added 4 bays in front of that. It also added a second floor over the office space, which I didn't draw because I didn't want to cover it up, but that's on the, well, for case of this picture, we'll call it the northwest side of the building. So that added the conference room, like a kitchenette. It's where we eat lunch every day, and it did renovate the offices. It kind of moved some things around, the bathrooms and whatnot. So that was in 2008, and unfortunately, the quality of that construction is extremely poor. I know that I've heard a lot of different things about it. There's the famous thing, you put a tennis ball on one side and it rolls to the other on the second floor. As we have begun to repair things like man doors, we found that it's missing the 3/4 plywood sheeting that's supposed to be on the outside of the steel studs. So you look at that facade and it has the vertical vinyl on it. There are structural aspects missing because it was probably removed due to cost. It's steel studs, insulation, siding. You could stick a fork right through from one side of the building to another. So, you know, there's definitely some items that were lacking in that construction. It's an unfortunate thing for us. We're really happy to have the space. We need the space, and we use it. And I'll show you, you'll see in the pictures, kind of, especially the garage bay, are very nice. It's nice to have that room. So some other things on the site, the fuel pumps, you'll see in the northeast corner, those tanks were installed in 1990, so they're about 34 years old at this point. We have one fuel dispenser, gas and diesel, that services DPW, Light Department, Police Department, Fire Department, Council on Aging, and the school district does use it as well. They don't use much fuel, but they use gas cans for their mowers and things like that. So all those different departments use and rely on our fuel pumps. We have our septic system. It's a pretty big piece in the southwest corner, obviously necessary. We don't have sewer in town. We have our salt shed with a lean-to. That's down here, so the lean-to on the southeast side. That does provide some cover storage for like where our wood chippers over there. We have our asphalt roller. Some of the stuff we don't use every day gets stored on that side. Salt shed holds about 600 ton. It's extremely small. It is starting to fail. A lot of the structural aspects of it are not intact anymore. It's been kind of band-aided together for a long time. Something that is in desperate need of repair or replacement. And we also have a Quonset hut. You can't see it in the picture. It's covered in trees here, but you can see it from the road. It's that big steel structure. We keep like the bucket truck under there. Again, it keeps the snow and the heavy rain off of some of the equipment, just to keep it a little bit more protected. So here's the picture of what we have. What you see down below, so if you draw a line right across here, what's down below was the existing offices. What's above that is the 2008 edition of the second floor. That 2008 edition also included this gray, which is the elevator shaft. So in order to build the building, we had to make it ADA compliant, that second floor, so they did put an elevator in. This piece over here as well, that is also the 2008. Those are those garage bays that were added on the front side of that building for the extra space. So this is kind of coming around to the side. You can see the various additions here. So here's the main building. There's a line somewhere in this area. That's where those 2 bays were added. These 2 chimneys right here are the 2 waste oil heaters. So that waste oil heater is in what we call that semi-cold storage. Those are the 2 bays that were added in the 70s. And then this is in the main building that was built originally. So there is a wall right somewhere in that area. Back on this side is cold storage. That's the unheated space that was also built in the 70s. And then we have various lean-tos, you know, just outside storage along the side. A lot of that used to be part of the recycling when the recycling was brought to that facility, which we can now use for storage. So that's my understanding anyways. This is cold storage, so this is kind of wrapping around the building looking back towards Route 12. So you can see the 3 bays. This bay right here is the drive-through, and then the 2 single bays, and then we can kind of stick some vehicles in between the doors if we jockey them around enough. But like I said, this purely keeps the rain and the snow off the equipment. It doesn't keep it heated. It's tough if we're in a snowstorm or a cold snap. We need to go salt. Our hydraulic oil is cold. You know, we can't, it takes a little bit longer to warm up. It's a little bit harder on the truck. So, but if we can jockey everything around, right now we keep 2 trucks in cold storage that we would need to salt with. So at least we can put most of them in the warm. Here's kind of the whole side. You can see the addition. So these 4 doors, that's the 2008. Right behind it is the original building, so they built onto the front of it. This is the semi-cold. Those are those 2 bays that were built, and then that's the cold storage on the side. So just wanted to give you guys a kind of a visual of what it looks like. Here's the fuel pump. Tanks are here. I think gas on that side, diesel's on that side. So each 5,000 gallon tanks, double walled, which is a positive thing. However, as the longer they are in the ground, the harder they are to insure. So we're at 34 years right now. We're certainly getting up there. And if you see most fueling stations like ours, other DPWs, they're all above ground tanks now. So what they do is they put the tanks in the middle, you pull on either side. You know, there's no, really only the gas stations are sticking with the underground tanks. Any of the smaller areas, they're almost all above ground at this point. So it keeps, you lose that unknown of is it leaking or is it not, which obviously is a huge environmental issue if there's a problem. This is the salt shed. I am of the belief that it was built with the help of Mass DOT. There's a number of salt sheds that look exactly like this all around our area. You can see the little lean-to off to the right side. I believe we added that with the help of the light department, you know, some years after the salt shed was built. Like I said, it holds about 600 ton. We use, it depends on the winter, anywhere between 2,000, 2,500 ton. We should be able to have storage capacity of more than 600 ton. 2 or 3 snowstorms right in a row, we would be depleted. 2 years ago, we actually did run out at one point because trucks were at such a demand. We weren't getting trucks. And we haven't had that issue since. We have a new supplier, which is great. But if we don't get that supplier in the bid and we can't get our trucks in, we're in trouble. But that's our existing salt shed. So here's inside the building, and you can see new versus old here. So the blue wall, that's the 2008. As you get through these openings, these are the original garage door openings for the original building. So essentially what they did is they built the new building. On the front of it, took down the old garage doors, and it was open to each other. So you can kind of see a line in the floor right here, new floor, old floor. The headspace in the new building's great. We can put a dump body almost all the way up. You can see where the lift is situated. We do have to be careful of that header there that's above the lift, but we can put a smaller vehicle up on a lift, you know, like a 1-ton size or whatnot. That works out good for us. A little harder to work on dump trucks in the back bays, but we can do it. We just can't necessarily go all the way up with the dump bodies. But that kind of shows the new versus old. So this is now standing in the old, looking towards the new. Again, you can see that blue wall in the top corner. If you look at where the loader is parked there, the loader's in the same spot. So this is all the old section where these things are parked. Here's that waste oil heater that you saw. We actually just recently took down the top of that wall there to allow for some more heat flow. It was kind of blocked. The waste oil heater vent is on the far side. Most of our heat we want on the bigger of the 3 bays. So we recently took that down, and it's kind of helped our heat circulation a little bit. Heating and cooling, well, no cooling, heating is we definitely struggle with. It's not very efficient. We have some very small fans. We have multiple different heating systems, so it's kind of a tricky piece. But this is old looking towards new. Here's some of the office spaces. This is our DPW foreman's office right there. There's a mechanic's office just off of that. What you see on the bottom right is storage. So that's like a mezzanine storage above these offices. There's a set of stairs to get up there, and then there's some storage up top. This is all in the older part of the building. Here's the kind of a combination heating system right here. So you see the waste oil. This is the waste oil tank. and then the heater above it, and then behind it are the 2 oil tanks, which are what heats the rest of the building. Excuse me. So we do have oil heat. We have in the garage bays. We try not to use them. We try to use all waste oil. You'll see us put signs out on the road that says, "Hey, if you have waste oil, drop it off here." We are lucky that we can use some local companies that come in and bring waste oil to us in 55-gallon drums that we can burn for heat. This year, we never had to fill that waste oil tank with just #2 heating oil. That's really good for us. It wasn't that cold of a winter either. In the past, we've ended up filling that waste oil tank with crude oil or #2 oil just because we didn't have enough waste oil. We don't generate enough in-house to heat the shop. Sterling Concrete's been great to us, Pandolph, Simpson, they've all given us their oil because they don't have waste oil heaters. Waste oil heaters are not very efficient at all. It's not something I would propose as a heat source in a future building. It's helpful, but it's far from efficient. We tinker with this thing at least once a week. Waste oil is just that, it's waste, right? Who knows what's in it, and we have gotten to the point now where anytime someone brings us something, we make sure they go there with a mechanic, sniff test it, check it, make sure it's not fuel, make sure it's not paint thinner, because we've gotten all of the above, and now we're responsible for disposing of it. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. It does work. It's nice to have. It definitely keeps costs down, but it has its drawbacks. What you see on the bottom picture, that's the back side of that semi-cold storage. Like I said, that's where we work. These are all lawnmower blades, where we work on chainsaws. There's the second waste oil heater right there. We store our saws, a lot of our smaller parts in this bay. So what you're looking at here on the top left, this is what we call the tool room. So this is a little structure that stands between what we call the semi-cold and the cold unheated storage. It's where we store our shovels, our rakes, our weed whackers, power brooms. You see some generators back here. There's one of our compactors. There's another side, if I had turned around and taken another picture, where we have like a metal chop saw and whatnot over there. But this is where we store a lot of our tools and equipment. Bottom side, this is cold storage. So as you can see, the catch basin cleaner, that's on the far side. So this is a piece of equipment that doesn't plow. So that ends up staying in cold storage. We plug it in so that it keeps some heat in the block. So if we need to use it, we can use it. You'll see our skid steers in there. The roadside mower attachment, we kind of stick in the corner to keep it out of the snow. And then one of our plow trucks in the front. So obviously it's not full at this time. There's some trucks out. But this is what cold storage looks like on the inside. Just showing a couple, issues with the building. This is where one of the lean-tos meets like an entrance door. We have some rot up here. You can see the soffit is falling off. I'll tell you right now that this building needs a roof. We are up there every single rainstorm. We have a contractor that comes in, a local guy, and we've been patching like crazy. So the roof, underneath the rubber roof, was done with nails that weren't ring shank nails and weren't screws. They are all popping up. You can walk around and push down the nails, but what happens is those nails come up through the rubber. It wasn't installed properly in the first place, and we're kind of paying the price right now. So the building as a whole needs a roof or something else at some point. So this isn't unfortunately a $5,000 or $10,000 roof. I don't have prices on it, but it's a big roof. These are just some of the structural issues. So this is the chimney coming out of semi-cold storage. You can see it better from the inside. If it's dark, you can see right through that wall. You can see the daylight coming through. You can see the cracks coming out of the chimney. Here's some of the foundation cracks in cold storage. So this is a very large vertical crack right there on the back corner. This horizontal crack runs almost the whole length. So the foundation itself is not at a level what it should be at this point. So it's definitely something that we're watching, not really something you can repair. Seeing that you have both horizontal and vertical cracks in that foundation, but something that we're keeping an eye on for sure. So what are our goals? What are our goals in the creation of this committee? These are kind of goals that I came up with. what I expect one of the first charges of the DPW facility committee will be to come up with their own goals, right? This is kind of a baseline, but I started with provide a safe and efficient facility for the DPW employees, right? Number one, selfishly, for me, I want my guys to be safe. So I want them to be able to walk around a truck, work around a truck, maneuver a truck in a facility that we're not going to worry about hitting a wall or not having enough room to lift a body to put a body up. What am I trying to say? The body support on it. You know, I want everybody to be able to work safely in proper ventilation, proper heat, proper AC, all that stuff. Second, I want to provide protection for our fleet. We have multi-million dollars worth of fleet at the Sterling DPW. It is a big fleet. We have a lot of pieces of equipment. We have a lot of employees. I want to be able to protect that fleet. I want to be able to store it inside, undercover, in the heat. If we need it, a lot of our stuff is emergency response. It could be 0 degrees and we have to get a backhoe out or an excavator out or whatnot and go do an excavation. And we need to be able to do that in a timely manner. And it's tough on the vehicles when you're firing it up. You know, a lot of these, especially the diesels, right? They take a little bit of time to get some heat in the motors. You want to give it enough time to warm up. We need to provide adequate covered salt storage. We do not have adequate covered salt storage at this point. Even if the building was perfect structure, it still isn't big enough. We don't use sand anymore. Most places don't use sand anymore. You know, we use a lot less salt than even we used to when we were using sand. However, we need to keep it covered. It's state law to keep it covered because what happens is it's an environmental issue when it rains. So we need to have adequate, you know, covered salt storage. Provide updated town-wide fuel storage and dispensing systems. Like I said, the pump, the tanks, everything was installed in 1990. I had the invoice and the scope of work for it in my hands yesterday. 34 years old at this point, used by all the departments that have a vehicle, which are all critical departments, right? Police, fire, SMLD, us, Council on Aging, for the MART vans. So we need to update the fuel system. We want to provide an efficient and environmentally friendly site layout that allows room to grow and adjust our operations, right? And you'll see some of the conceptual drawings that we've done in the past, or that we've already done here, to try to, you know, see what we have room for. What do we have room for on our site now? Keep in mind that this site was developed in the 50s, right? So regulations have changed, zoning has changed, environmental things have changed. So we can take a look at that. And then of course, I think one of the most important parts is to provide a project that's palatable for the Sterling taxpayers, right? We're not looking to build a Taj Mahal, we're not looking for 1,000 watts, right? But at some point, this building needs to be attended to. You know, anything that we delay, right, or it just ends up kicking the can down the road for something else in the future. We can do 10,000 upgrades to it, or we can package it, and that's a decision for that Public Works facility, the committee to come up with. So what have we done so far? So in 2001, it's actually before my time, the town hired Weston and Sampson engineers who have a division dedicated to the design of municipal public works facilities. I personally have worked with Weston and Sampson. I was a member, not a voting member, an ad hoc member of the DPW facility committee in Holden from 2016 to when I left in 2021. I saw that project from before they even had a pen on paper, all the way to picking out my office furniture for my new office before I left and came here, which again was one of the best decisions I've made. So I'm really happy here. I like my office better here than I did in Holden. But so I have a lot of experience with Weston and Sampson. They have built a ton of public works facilities. Public works facilities are not the town barn anymore, right? It's not a giant warehouse that you park trucks and that's it. There's maintenance bays, there's fuel systems, there's offices, there's water SCADA systems that need to be protected. There's all kinds of different systems in these buildings that you don't want to just stick in a corner or stick in a closet. So what Weston and Sampson did, they came in, they reviewed the entire building, they looked at all their systems, the heating, the cooling, the electrical services, all the different additions, the structural aspects of it. They looked at the exterior stuff, the fuel, the salt shed, the Quonset hut, all the different pieces that we have on site at the DPW. They interviewed numerous employees at the DPW about the functionality of that existing building. And then they did go over, what are some of the things that can make your job easier? How do you think we can function, function differently? They analyzed the workforce numbers, which gets you to the number of offices, the number of lockers, the size of the bathrooms, things like that, all very preliminary items. They also reviewed the fleet. They analyzed the interior, whether each piece of equipment needs to be inside, can just be covered, or can be stored outside. There are stuff that can be stored outside. There's stuff that doesn't need, you don't need to park an enclosed trailer inside a heated garage, right? But it'd be nice if it was parked under covered, so that if you needed to grab it quick, you could. So, and then also the size of these vehicles, right? You need smaller parking spaces for a pickup truck than you do for a big truck. You need to look at turning radiuses for the big trucks. When the big trucks have a plow on it, the turning radius is even bigger. So can it pull into a parking space? Can it not? So all this information was compiled into what we call a space needs summary. It looks at the square footage necessary to operate the DPW safely and efficiently. So our existing facility, inside space, is about 15,000 square feet, all totaled up. That includes everything, including the cold storage. The recommendation based on the space needs summary was about 38,000 square feet. So you can see we're less than half the size based on a very preliminary space needs survey, right? We spent less than $20,000 on this so far. So just keep in mind, very, very, very preliminary. And as part of that also, they created some preliminary conceptual designs. So this again is the site. It's a little bit of a better picture than what I had before, a little bit more clear. You can actually see the Quonset hut now down this way. What you see, these yellow lines, those are the zoning setbacks, right? So those are do not build lines. We can't build within that. You'll see that when they built cold storage, they built right up to it. It was the new building, the original building in the front, it's kind of outside of those setbacks. Believe it or not, the black line is the property. Mass DOT owns a giant chunk of our parking lot. It's just where the right-of-way is. So you'll see their right-of-way jogs in right here. This is the road access to the DCR. They call them the filter beds, the areas where the stormwater goes. Mass DOT owns everything through here. So where we park our vehicles over here, DOT owns that. They haven't given us any crap about it or anything, which I appreciate because we need the space to park our cars, but they're not going to let us build a building in that area or have permanent structures. So we got to keep that in mind. So here's just a rough drawing or a rough concept of what something could look like. Now, for these concepts, I just want to point out they do not show a septic system, which is a very big piece, and it's a big septic system, which would need to be on our site. So these do not show that, and they also don't show any stormwater management. Detention ponds, which will be required, that's the big one, detention ponds, right? I'm talking space, square footage chewers. So they don't show any of that. So you can see these concepts relate to the square footage from the space needs study. So very typical with public works facilities now, all of these are going to show that the storage, the vehicle storage is center aisle with vehicles parked on either side. It works very, very well. They've been doing this since about the 80s. The town of Shrewsbury has one that was built in the 80s. It's built just like this, and they're still doing it today. It works very well for fleet storage. One of my biggest, complaints, issues with our building is our fleet storage is also our mechanics bays, and our mechanics bays are also our fleet storage. It's not productive for us. If we're working on something, we need to jockey everything around, make sure that we're not blocking something in if we down a vehicle in front of it. So dedicated mechanics bays are going to be very valuable for us. So you'll see that in here. So there's the fleet maintenance, part storage, couple bays with including a drive-through bay. Wash bays are very critical. We wash every single time. I say every single time. If we don't see anything forecasted for 48 hours, we're washing our vehicles after a salt event. We want to get that salt off the vehicles. It's very important. We want to keep our fleet looking nice. We value our fleet very much. We're happy with the fleet that we have. We want to keep it, looking in tip-top shape and lasting as long as it can. So wash bay is something that would get used very frequently. This is some canopy space, so essentially covered on 3 sides, open on the front. This is where you'd store your wood chippers, your trailers, but it would be stored on a paved surface instead of a dirt salt mix that kind of everything is stored on right now. And then it kind of goes up into some of the shops, right? Water would have a place to store parts, store meters. They'd have an office to work out of. Right now they work out of what used to be a bathroom. When you first walk in the building, there's toilet drains on the floor and everything, and 3 guys work out of that room. Very, very small. Our SCADA equipment, which is supervisory control data acquisition, it's the computer system that runs our whole water system, that's stored in that room, along, like I said, with 3 guys, including the foreman who does tons of paperwork at a computer all the time. It's a tight space for them. So they would have space. We would have, shop space for highway and grounds. You could pull mowers in there, scrape decks. You can store your shovels, and everyone kind of has their own little space. So that's kind of just one concept. You'll see the salt shed, the fuel island. It just looks briefly at circulation and things like that. Here's just another option, right? It kind of just turns everything a little bit. It doesn't get into vertical elevation. I don't know, 1 story, 2 story. It's too early to talk about that stuff, right? These are just concepts of how it would look in our existing space. Here's a third one. So this one, everyone kind of moves the fuel and the salt shed. This one I think is kind of interesting because the fuel is in a separate spot, which would be nice for the police, fire, maybe they don't have to drive through the whole DPW yard to get there. But my issue with these concepts is that the site is very tight. There's no room to even open your elbows. If you wanted to say we had a load of dirt on that we needed to dump out, right? There's no place to do any of that. It's very, very tight because of the site constraints. So we also had them look at the sand pit out behind the landfill. So this is George E. Piso. So you have the police station up top. You have where the RC club flies, that's over the top of the landfill. This is down that road. So if you ever brought your leaf or brush clippings down there, this would be down there. This is where all the sand came for the roads for a long, long time. It's still technically labeled as an active mine. I do paperwork for it every single year. It's a surface mine, they call it. We don't mine that sand anymore. We use it, I'll call it as our own material transfer station, right? Any of our spoils we bring down there. We do run material through our screener down there, make a little bit better material out of it, mostly to back up the edge of the road for paving jobs. Anything big that we have coming in, we can have delivered down there. We store some pipe and whatnot. But that site would give us a lot more room to open up. So again, just showing the concept of what it would look like, kind of just stuck into that site. All the yard waste, brush dump, it would all be in one spot, which would be kind of cool. And it still has all this extra land that's already been cleared back there of it's just land, right? It's not space that we would need for the building at this time. And just a couple more concepts at that same site. So, in the short amount of time that we've kind of looked at this, those are the 2 sites we looked at. Are there more? Probably. And that's what the facility committee will be looking at, right? They'll be looking at what's the best site to build this at? What's palatable to the taxpayers? What's the most efficient use of the space? Along with an architect, they'll be working together. So what are the next steps? So at the March 14th meeting of the Board of Selectmen, they officially created the DPW Facility Committee. The DPW Board drafted a letter, wrote that to the Select Board. The Select Board created that committee on March 13th. So the committee is going to be made up of 5 voting members. So 1 voting member from the Select Board, 1 from the Finance Committee, 1 from the DPW Board, and 2 resident members. The 2 resident members, we've received 6 applications for those 2 spots. We're going to be interviewing those folks coming up at a meeting in May, DPW board meeting, and then the DPW board will be making their decision sometime in the next week or so. There'll be another posted meeting where they'll vote to recommend the 2 members that they choose based on the interviews to the select board. The select board does all the appointing because they are the governing board in town, so they appoint members to committees and boards. So when the board members are appointed by the select board, they'll meet regularly, likely once a month, sometime in that range, with, and kind of look at as the recommendations, right? Do we renovate? Do we build new? Do we stay at the same location? Do we find a new location? How big does it go? What bells and whistles does it have? Is there anything else that needs to go as part of this building? None of those decisions have been made. I mean, absolutely none. So this is the kind of stuff that citizen committee will be looking at. It's very similar to the committee that they used for the senior center, the building we're in right now, police department, fire department. Very, very common for public buildings to have a committee associated with them, separate from, say, a governing or elected committee. Thank you guys for listening.
Yeah, sure. So I go on.